nice small group. So we'll be able to have a very nice, cozy conversation. And Aruna, if you are okay with having more of a loose dialogue back and forth, I think that might work really, really well. So maybe reading, one or two poems and then kind of pausing, or 3 or 4 poems and pausing. And then I think that would give us more of a conversation. So I'll go ahead and now we're recording. I will officially start things by saying, hi, I'm Malaika Albrecht, and I am the founding editor of Redheaded Stepchild. And I have been fortunate enough to be doing these weekly book launches for poets who have a book out during the pandemic. And I literally weekly, we've had amazing poets coming on and sharing their work with us. Tonight is no exception. And so I'm going to be very brief in my introduction for Aruna Gurumurthy. She's an American author and observer of human nature. And since her childhood in Mumbai, India, she has embarked on a journey of creative exploration. So that is going to be my basic introduction. I do want to ask one question, Aruna. Do you have a preference where you would like people to get your book? And are you offering people like a chance to get a signed copy?
Yeah, so there are 2 options. One is they can go to Amazon and look up my book and purchase it from there. And the other is that I have some books at home, so they can order them through me and I can sign the copies and send them over to them.
Great. That's perfect. So what is the best way to get a hold of you? Do you prefer Facebook, or would you want to put your email in the chat section?
Yeah, I'm trying to figure out.
And I am going to point out that Aruna's daughter and her husband are with us on the reading. Hi, guys. Glad you're here.
So I'm just...
You're pretty excited, huh? That's awesome. What grade are you in?
No,
first grade.
First grade.
First grade. Wow. How's it going for first grade? That's making you a big girl now.
Thank you.
That's awesome. Well, we're glad that you're here. So you'll get to hear your mom read. This is going to be a lot of fun. So Aruna has put her email address in the chat section, and I am going to go ahead and pin you or spotlight you if you want. I think that works really well, but we'll still be with you. You can still see us, okay? And guys, you can go ahead and stay unmute. Normally I ask people to mute, but since we're a small group, this will keep us more interactive. So if you want to unmute and just be ready to talk, and that's what we can do. All right, Aruna, it's all yours.
Thank you so much, Malaika, for having me over. This is truly a special opportunity, and I appreciate all the good that you do to the literary community and beyond. And through your poems, through your welding work, through your healthcare work, and recently through watching this gentleman, I think you are an amazing role model for a lot of people around. And I'm happy to be in the company of people like you. And I hope to submit some of my poems to the Redheaded Stepchild soon, and keep this loop going. You know, that's all about poetry and literary work, is to we want to keep it going. So today I'm going to be reading from my new book. It's called Down the Grassy Aisles. And this was published by Kelsey Books back in August 2020. During the pandemic craziness, I managed to get this book out, and that was quite special for me. And so the book is about love, laughter, and hope during tough times. And I just think that it's about innocence that sees no seams, and nature that knows no bounds. And much of it has been inspired by my little daughter and my husband, our little family, also extending to other realms of my life. So without further ado, I want to begin with the first poem in the book. I haven't put tag marks or anything, so y'all will have to put up with me flipping through the book a little bit. So this one is called Poetry at the Port, And this was a poetry reading that I did at our carport maybe a year and a half or 2 years ago. And this is what it is about. Poetry at the port. One Sunday in the December weeks of spring, we gather like geese at the pond. We gather at our port amidst the charm and stacked hay, green splendor swaying, drooping from the sky. We listen and soak in poems as the rain soaks us in merry glory. My voice, still and sanguine, sings of the pigeons, the Ponte Vecchio crumbling from the laughter of lovers passing by, my mental piano going allegro for 1,000 miles. Gladly, I'm interrupted by the knocks of my 5 going on 6 little charmer and the sighs of the spectators as though gently moving the unseen curtains. Shall I say simplicity beckons?
Your daughter's being very enthusiastic. That's awesome. Yeah, you're the star of that poem in a lot of ways.
She was actually there during the reading, and she I have a video clipping of that reading, and she kind of ran to me as I sang this, as I recited this poem, and it was just really funny. It was a fun moment. Next, I'm going to read what is one of my childhood memories, which is getting drenched in the Mumbai rain. I was 6 years old, and we were out with our friends. And so Mumbai monsoons happen from June to almost 2 or 3 months later. And they are just flooding rains, and it's a pleasure to be out in the rain and get wet. So I used to be with my friends, about 10 kids, like literally squeezing ourselves into a tiny umbrella, the kids' umbrella, and walking up and down the streets in the rain. So this was just a very pleasant memory for me. And it's called Those Were the Rainy Days. Summer knocks, then beckons. I remember the beats of the Bombay monsoons, downpours slapping us with life. The raindrops descend on my glossy pink raincoat-covered body, then into my warm soul. Colas and popsicles wetting a mouthful. A reason for the water balloons to fill and toss at tiny shirts in an ongoing bonanza of thrill. A display of amusement, squeezing every bit of enthusiasm into a tiny umbrella, swinging arms like Mariah in the Sound of Music, singing Rain, Rain, Go Away, drenched and dancing to eternity. In the downpour, we devour corn from the neighbor's corn stand. He roasts the corn, rubs red cayenne and crushed peppercorns, and drizzles it with lemon drops, tasting like butter had bestowed its best on us. Our hearts trip into fields of love, tickled tongues licking the peripheral remains of the snack inside our cutesy cheeks. Aha, is this life or is this love? Those are the Bombay Wala days. So Mumbai is the name now, and back then when I was a child, it used to be called Bombay. So I'm still in a habit of calling it Bombay because that's what I remember growing up in. And so that was, and then now I want to shift gears a little bit. And let me see, any questions so far? I can pause for a few minutes.
It's lovely. And so it was kind of nice to hear a memory and then have a poem where we see your daughter at that age, and then another poem where we see you at that age.
Yeah. Hang on, I'm just going to get my water real quick. I'll be right
sure. Help. That's perfect timing. And I'm going to point out to everybody that cool clock if you didn't already look at it. That is really cool. Aruna, I can see why that clock spoke to you. It's fascinating.
Yeah, in fact, I have a little bit of an artsy mind myself. So when I look at things, I kind of have a liking for it instantaneously. And then I have to Google it and then make sure that I find the right product. And it's a journey.
I was going to ask you, since we're on this and artistic inclinations, where did you get your cover from? How did you choose that cover?
This cover, so the company that I went, that published my work, asked me to give them a JPG of the cover I'd like to use. And I pretty much they gave me one of those 123rf.com kind of websites. And I just looked it up there and I found it's pretty neat. It's a nice art cover.
Yeah, it's lovely, yeah.
So, let's see. Talking about the cover, I do want to take you through the journey of Down the Grassy Aisles, the title of the book. And I'm happy to read this memory that I had with my dad, and when we used to go on morning walks to the Kolaba, Bombay, parks, basically. And it's called Down the Grassy Aisles. It's the title poem. At the crack of dawn, my dad turns off the cuckoo clock every single day. He chews a piece of antioxidant mint, and we set out on the grassy aisle of the suburban Kolaba, skirting South Bombay. No talks, just our nods tell the tales. My set the tone for our brief convos as I breathe in his wisdom. We stop at the chai stall, drinking our refreshing cups of tea, our chaos blown away by the steam. Our visions turning in a projectile, scanning through the green pastures of the Gulf lands with pools of water and pelicans pecking at every endearing droplet. My Walkman singing Eric Clapton's My Father's Eyes, and my gaze turns to his eyes, the hazel beauties of creation. Blessed with bonding walks and soulful rendezvous, bound by timelessness, we embrace the dots of life. One evening, he ties my luggage tags and religiously writes my name on them with a black felt pen. We hug each other and bid goodbye. One morning, I open my eyes to the mountains of Massachusetts, waking up to the same cuckoo clock. I think of my dad. I ponder walking down the grassy aisles together. I'm brushing away my goosebumps because he's gone.
I did want to ask you, is that a cuckoo clock behind you over the
There is. Do you see that?
Yeah.
It doesn't work anymore.
Yeah, I was just wondering as you read, for some reason I saw it and I was like, I wonder if that's it.
So yeah, that is the cuckoo clock.
Awesome.
Just taking a moment of silence to figure out what to read next.
Yeah, I'm going to let somebody in from the waiting room, Pamela. So we'll give her just a moment. So if you want to take your time, Aruna, it's perfect timing.
Okay. So I'm going to read in random order, not necessarily the poems that come one after the other. So stop me if you think that I should move on to another poem.
Don't worry about it. Just enjoy the ride.
The Dance. This is my imagination, but also sort of elements of it were taken from a memory. So as you can tell often from the poems that I've read so far, this is a book of memories and rich memories. So a few years ago, maybe 5 or 6 years ago, when my daughter was little, we all went to um, Dominican Republic on a vacation. We went to the beach there, and my husband and I were dancing, and this kind of brings back those memories to me. Although the truth is that my husband doesn't like to dance much. I mean, it's not like he doesn't like to dance, but he doesn't know the techniques to dance. So he'll just stand there and move his hips a little. and so, but that's kind of fun. I know. I mean, men don't, it's like that Hitch movie, right? Have you all seen it?
Yeah, yeah.
Hitch. And who is the guy? Kuti, do you remember? Is he listening?
Is it Will Smith?
Will Smith, exactly. So Will Smith tells the other guy, his friend, not to do like the pizza dance and the moves and all that, and to just stand at one place and shake his hips. And that's pretty much what VJ does. The dance. The twinkle of hazel eyes, entwining her in the mystery, bronze skin like a fresh ooze on the palate, curls capturing every bit of swinging romance, a reason to shed the inhibitions and shake the hips, saying hello. They dance with ecstatic flow, dousing the unseen reverberations, sparking a glow in the dark. Her lavender skirt twirls and lifts just a bit, exposing her ravishing skin. He bends her in a quintessential dip. Earrings dangle, hearing the secrets in the air, spreading the sweet rapture onto his kind face. The jive comes alive when the sensual bodies of the dancing duo evanesce into a flame. And so a couple poems about my experience with motherhood. Infant's masterpiece. I never thought that our home would be invaded by baby board books, soft plush toys, and rattles scattered as though doodles drawn in thin air, tunes of furlies and nursery rhymes emerge like a gush of rising clouds from her crib. When baby's eyes twinkle, I hear a mind filled with thunderous wonder. Globes of fond goodness melt within our hearts. Tears amble down our cheeks. We ride along this infant's mess, this infant's masterpiece. I like this one. This is one time my daughter and I were cooking, and she had worn her baby apron and a chef's hat, and we were making green beans in the kitchen. So this is what it is: green bean mash. Summer celebration in my kitchen. Baby girl wants to cook a culinary paradise with me. We slide a packet full of green beans onto my favorite round and rustic cutting board. She chips the ends, I chop the beans, mixing them with the holy potatoes. What a medley of green and yellow stirring in my pots, stirring my thinking pots. She deftly adjusts her apron straps and turns her chef's cap. We are fellows in the kitchen. She jumps on her toddler stool and reaches out to the microwave and the moon, wanting more. More chores to explore, more doors to open, When the mash stirs, we sweep the corners with a ladle. She dips her spoon in the mash and licks the falling drops, a perfect symphony bubbling in her tiny mouth and in our kitchen. Anyone wants to ask anything? Anything you wonder about?
Yeah, you can unmute people. Feel very free to do so, because I think that we're lucky with a smaller group that we can have more conversation. And we have one other person joining us from the waiting room. So that's awesome. And welcome, Pamela. Glad you're here. So we can ask your daughter, how do you like being inspiration for poems?
Go ahead. You wanted to say?
I like being inspiration for poems and I'm really interested in writing.
Oh, I can see why. So your mother kind of is inspiring to you. Do you write your own poems too?
No, I don't write my own poems, but sometimes I do small ones.
Yeah, that's lovely. Aruna, it sounds oftentimes that your memories are like recent or they fall further back, and it's nice to hear all of that together.
Yeah, hopefully it gives you a snippet of, you know, the beginning to the end kind of thing, you know, although it's not the end yet, but I'm just saying.
Part of the journey.
What's your writing process? Do you have things you do every day to get started writing and keep the inspiration going and come up with ideas?
Yeah, that's an interesting question because, you know, my mind is very spontaneous. So I can't tell myself that I have to sit down and write from 10 to noon and come up with ideas hence. So I basically can't do that. When I'm driving or when I'm sitting on the couch and looking outside at the rain, suddenly inspiration pours on me and I start typing on the notes section of my phone, and or I go to Facebook and put a post. So if you see, my posts are not necessarily edited. They are just raw information coming out of my mind. And I put the post on Facebook, then I go back to my folder of poems and then copy paste the post and basically save it and then work on it for a more detailed poem or a more refreshed version of it. So I get inspiration from nature and I get inspiration from the life around me. And I like to write positive poems and I enjoy the aura of poetry that I have created for myself in my mind. And it's something that can do good for, if people employ their minds and their pens together, then that symphony can lead to a lot of good things in the world. And so does that sort of answer your question?
It does. That does, because it's hard for me to set a time and say, I'm going to write from this time to this time. It doesn't happen that way for me that often. So it's nice to know that somebody else is kind of
and there may be days at a stretch where I don't write. So it's not a regimen that I have to wake up and go to work from 9 to 5 and write my poems in there. It doesn't work like that for me.
Right.
There may be days, and it starts to worry me a little bit when I get to the stage when I haven't written for, let's say, 2 weeks, and then suddenly something will pop in my head and I start writing about it. So it's blame it on the spontaneous mind.
It sounded like you resonated with that, Christy.
Definitely.
Yeah. And if anybody else has a question, feel free to jump in. If not, we'll go back to reading poetry. Hi, Pamela. What a cool backdrop. That's awesome.
You. I just going off to your other response, I wanted to know if your writing you feel has changed anyway in the pandemic. Do you feel like the process is different in any way, considering that you might be spending more time indoors, or you might not get the same type of interaction with the world that you may have been accustomed to?
Actually, with the pandemic, like I mentioned, even during the pandemic, I decided to publish this book. And most of my work in the recent past has been done about, let's say most of it has been done not really about the pandemic or the sadness from it or anything like that, but more like where my mind takes me to happy places, because that's what people want to learn and read at a time where everyone is gripped with sorrow. They want some kind of respite and to get out into a world where people are actually talking about good things, pink raincoats and dripping rain and bubbling courage and stuff like that. So I definitely have produced more during the pandemic. You know, I have two more manuscripts running right now. One is a book of sestinas, and the other one is a book of poems, a full-length collection. So all of these three books happened to me during the course of the pandemic, and so I, you know, so that, but in that way, I've written a lot, and I feel good about it. I feel energized. There are some poems where I talk about the pandemic also, and try to reel into the positive parts of what we can look for, the hope, the value of life, and stuff like that.
It's a really good question, though, Pamela, because I've heard a lot of writers with this weekly book launch talk about their experience, and some have said, you know, similar things to what Aruna is saying, but then I've also had several say, without the input or the interaction or the synergy that happens in our lives, they're not writing as much. So I think it kind of depends on a lot of different characteristics that are very subtle in each individual. Others have written more because they felt like, you know, with the social justice movement, they felt very inspired. With the pandemic, they felt very passionate. So I think it's interesting to hear everybody's response and how, what is your relationship to poetry? I mean, essentially what we're asking in a lot of our questions is, you know, what is your relationship with poetry? And Aruna, it sounds like there's that long tradition historically as words as a healing journey or a place to celebrate beauty. And that's has a long tradition. So it's fascinating to hear people's thoughts. So thanks for asking that question. I wasn't even, it wasn't on my radar. So it was nice to have somebody bring it up. So Aruna, why don't we go back to your book and you just pick out 3 more poems, and then we can, you know, be relaxed and talk a little bit more about your process or about what you're up to now. It sounds like you have 2 other manuscripts, so we can hear more about that.
Sure. Up in the air, between sips of an infusion of dry chamomile, I gently stroke my hair. My eyes roll up and down the tiny black and white letters of the local newspaper. An advertisement pops up at me. Will you be my teacher? Will you please? The words take me back to my days as a cool teaching assistant in graduate school, marching up and down the pathways of Moral Science Building with a thick bunch of colored folders, sometimes dropping on the floor, scattering into a rainbow. Then giving a lecture on the sun, the moon, and photosynthesis. There is a synthesis of ideas in my mind, a somersaulting of sorts. I apply for the job with the cover letter, the curriculum vitae, why I would make a good teacher, and what my students had to say. My mind throws a frisbee. You gotta throw it to know if it will spin or follow a sad trail and become an awkward plonk. So I threw mine and it's up in the air. Thank you. So life is not always a happy everything, right? We all go through our journey and we all come out in one way or another, learning something out of it. And this is a poem that talks about courage, and I will read it aloud to you. I am drinking a cup of courage. Oh, I do want to say that when we go to the coffee shop and, you know, either carry our mug or a cup with us and get that filled, so we go somewhere to get the your cup of hazelnut coffee or whatever it is that you like or drink. And the whole point of this poem is that cup of courage comes from within. That is the cup of courage. And I am drinking a cup of courage. In the middle of stormy seas and monster ripples, a 12-month-old crawls the unseen ladders of fright. A 720-month-old senior is cornered by dementia. A 400-month-old dizzy, staggering mother is ready to drown. Oh God, I cry for a small cup of courage. And God says, my dear, a cup of courage is not a given, but a birthing. I wander in the wilderness, searching for that enticing cup, gently plucking herbs, shaking and stirring them into the know-it-all of my life. Marrying every rhythm of reality, twisting each misty morning, touching my tummy, I feel the bubbling of something special. Courage is about to be born. And you said one more, right, Malaika?
Yeah, so you can read one or two more and then we can chat a little bit more. So just pick out whatever you would like to. Your daughter looks like she's found a Snuggie to hold on to.
Yeah.
Getting comfortable.
Yeah. It's actually, is that Santa, Dia? Yeah, that is
Santa. Okay.
Okay. So I have two more facing each other, so I'm gonna read both of them. Musings. And this is part of our dating journey. How I met my husband and good things after. Musings. One December, we meet eye to eye at the coffee shop at the crooked corner where land meets water. His order is tall misto. I had never heard of that drink before. Between sips of coffee and dips of tea, words crisscross, drawing tiny red hearts in my mind's dialogue box. Hours pass like tumbling boulders, picking up my handbag and straightening the crease of my skirt. I say, thank you for the coffee. We hike the mountains of Mackinac Island, sniffing the scent of always and forever you and me in the air. At the scenic overlooks, we gaze down at the dipping unknown. Shortly after, we quiet the embers of the fireplace in the cabin. With dust-coated ping-pong battles, we play bygone battles. Like the tick-tock of a pendulum clock with rhythmic rattles. We win, we lose, then suddenly in the air, with a fierce backhand, he smashes and says, I lost on purpose. I did not want you to feel bad. Little did I know that he lost in the game of ping pong to win in the name of love. And then I'm gonna read Red Poppy Flower Peeps. This is something that I got inspired while doing some gardening in the yard. And so it's not a memory of my life, but it's a memory of of this plant that was growing as I saw it. Red poppy flower peeps. I thought she was gone, but I gave her water anyway. Every day I made sure she was blessed by the bounty of sunshine and a stream of water trickling from the water spout to her mouth, refreshing the dry remains of her life, recovering from sadness. The tiny bubbles in line made a soft trail, touching her under the mud, lifting her kindly. I endeared her with pellets of fertilizer and food, her hungry soul wanting to sprout into glory. I threw in some prayers too. I prayed to the Almighty, God, she's Mother Nature. Bring her back to life. Bring her back to me. Today, after a long spell of bathing in love, fondness, and warmth, I saw a red poppy flower peeping into the air, soaring high, then slightly bending to the earth, as though wanting more. She gave me a mouthful of motherly joy. My senses prickled with her blessings, bringing me tears and tearful joys. She told me to keep on going even if you have tears. She spoke to me in a language only I could understand. Don't cry. The poppies will shine soon. We will be a garden of reddened bliss. So don't think we had to die.
If everybody wants to unmute, you can clap with me. Thank you so much, Aruna.
Thank you.
And I will take the spotlight off of you so you can have more conversation and company.
So I just want to bring y'all's attention to the back cover of the book. And other than my picture, it's got a little bit about myself, my bio. I think it's the same as what Malaika read. And it has these little blurbs from authors and editors that I know. So this is the first book, you know, I've published 7 books so far. And this is the first book that I had the opportunity to, actually the second book that I had the opportunity to have others say something about my book. Because it's easy for me to come here and read and say all these things, but it's also once in a while important to hear what other people have to say about your work. And it brings me great joy that all these people, Jean Julian, John Amen, and Valerie Neiman, have taken the time, they're all very busy people, taken the time to read through my manuscript and offer comments on it.
Yeah, that's awesome. It's nice to have acquaintances read, you know, and friends read your book and then write a blurb for it. And it's nice to hear back what people see in the work. Yeah. So
I got an opportunity to write a blurb for someone else's book.
Yeah.
And so I'm paying back what I got. And so that's how a literary community thrives. And
totally agreed. I mean, and that's the emphasis on that community part. Very good point, Aruna. Very good point. So I think if people want to ask questions or ask about individual poems or more about process, like Christy was saying, that would be lovely to have communication, because it's the nice thing about having a small group. But we can't meet in person, but we can be personable. And I did have a question, Aruna. You said that you had a full length and then another manuscript that you had completed.
Awesome.
Yeah.
So I have completed the manuscript of my Sestinas. That is a chapbook and has 13 Sestinas. So the first time I wrote a book of Sestinas, there were 12 Sestinas in there. And this one has one poem more. You know, it's very intense to write a a sestina. It's a long poem. It's got 6 stanzas and a tercet, and there's all this line forming and end words that you need to stick to. And in fact, Lisa Tomei, who's one of our attendees today, helped edit my work for this book. And hi, Lisa.
It'd be nice to kind of hear about that collaboration. So, I think a lot of us poets have people that we work with, whether it's in, say, a writing group, or just a friend who, understands our aesthetics and works well. So I kind of want to hear from Lisa too. So do y'all do that? Aruna, do you exchange poems, or did you hand the whole thing to Lisa and she kind of worked with you?
So I used to write a poem, like when I finished the sestina, I would send it to her and she would look it up and offer her comments. She'd send it back to me. So we kind of went back and forth till I was satisfied that this whole poem looked really good and that I feel comfortable submitting it somewhere. Recently, I put up a compilation of 3 of those sestinas and sent it to a foundation that is considering people for poetry prizes. So I started doing this maybe in October, because it took me a while to set up these sestinas and make sure that they are good enough for sharing with other folks. So we'll see. Hopefully there will be one day when I get blessed by something like that. Nothing wrong in hoping. And it's an interesting journey I've been through. And so this is my chapbook of sestinas, and it will be out. I've submitted it to a couple of places for considering it for a contest. But maybe, if I am not wrong, by the end of this year, it may have been published. So that's sort of my long-term goal for this year.
That's a great long-term goal. Oh, you've got a backdrop. Your daughter just put a backdrop back there. That's awesome. Okay,
one of the things that I can say for about Aruna is she works hard on these sestinas, well, all of her poetry, because I think I just about see everything that she's written, probably pretty close to right on that. And, just sometimes they get an opinion or sometimes they do an edit. And I really am impressed about how much work she puts into a poem. And rework and rework and rework till it's just right. And I think that's why her sestinas are so wonderful. And that's actually how we met, is because I read her book, Puppet Dolls. And I'm like, oh my goodness, this is just amazing. And so I had commented about it on a blog, and so that's kind of where we started, talking about sestinas and poetry. But she taught a sestina course at with Starbucks. We all got together and she taught us how to do sestinas, which is not easily done in one course. However, she was very thorough, and I learned a lot about writing sestinas.
That's awesome. I love hearing that story, Lisa. I'm glad.
And I didn't pay her to say that.
That doesn't mean you can't get her a Starbucks card. That's what friends do. Yeah, but that's, it's obviously a very fruitful, relationship, friendship, and I love how it began. So it was nice to hear that, Lisa, because I do think so much of writing, if you're going to get stronger and better at it, is in the editing, right? And it is in making sure that we choose that exact right word, that exact right phrase to convey what we want to convey. And that's where we need other sets of eyes, and our literary community is critical for our growth as writers. So it's nice to see a fruitful friendship. Thank you for telling us that. Anybody else
I
have
think
any
poetry
questions?
needs more than one set of eyes too. I think they need to go to more people and get more input.
Definitely.
Yeah. Christy and I have been in writing groups together before, so we understand that one.
It's always nice to get a new set of eyes and a new word, because sometimes I like a particular word, and if I'm not careful, it'll pop up in too many poems. So it's when somebody says, don't use that word anymore, wait like a month or two before you put that one back in.
It's hard not to have favorite words, much like we have favorite candy or favorite foods.
Definitely.
Certain words just taste good. So, you know, we also have open mic, and I wanted to remind people, if you would like to sign up for open mic, you may do so. Just send me a quick message via chat. And if there are no other questions, then we'll take a moment to honor Aruna's work and celebrate with her this publication of Down the Grassy Isles. And okay, so no questions?
I just am very
ahead,
curious.
Pamela.
Just right now, Aruna, who are you reading right now? Like whose work gives you inspiration?
Actually, I don't inspire myself from from other writers. I have been reading some contemporary work recently. I've been getting subscription to the Poem a Day of the Academy of American Poets, and I read their poems as it comes to my email every day. But the inspiration from my work comes from me, and not from somebody else's style or the way they write or how they write about certain things or anything. It's always coming from my core, and that's you know, I truthfully represent my work that way. I do like Mary Oliver though. She writes a lot of nature poems, and I like her. And when I was in middle school, we were introduced to, I distinctly remember two poems. One was Daffodils by Wordsworth, and the other one was The Road Not Taken by Frost. And so I completely, I really liked those poems. But that was back in the day when I was in middle school. Yeah.
It's always fascinating to hear who, you know, what you're reading and things like that. Even if you don't feel like you're directly influenced, it's much like you are what you eat. I think it's very important to draw in information or connect with, be inspired. When we were celebrating Lucille Clifton, after her death, she lived to 72. And so we were going to read 72 of her poems at James Madison University, where the Furious Flower Poetry Center is. And it was 72 different poets reading 72 of Lucille Clifton's poems. And you would think, hearing 72 poems read in one sitting, that might be a bit much, but I could have sat there all night. There was poets like Jericho Brown, Rita Dove, just a list of literary, you know, are what I consider rock stars to me, reading fabulous life work. And so I do think that that synergy of poets is for me, the cornerstone of what inspires me to write. Thank you so much, Aruna. It was lovely to hear your work, and it was nice to hear some of the backstories. It was also lovely to have your daughter and your friends here and your husband, and then also, you know, to hear poems that they inspired or that harkened back to your childhood, and to notice the cuckoo clock up there. That was lovely. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Malaika. And
my pleasure.
For those who dropped in later, I just want to mention that my email address is on the chat box. And if you're interested in getting a copy of my book, a signed copy, then do shoot me an email and I'll send it to you.
Perfect. Thanks for reminding him that. That's very important. So is there anybody that would like to read for open mic? I know, Lisa, I was kind of pushing you to read something. Did you find something you'd like to share?
I did. It is called, just one second. Find the right one. Okay, since we were talking about the pandemic, I went and pulled my pandemic poems out. And this is called Trials of the Living Kind. Perhaps there ought to be a way to find the heart of man. Then this thing, it happened. What a trial of the fittest, the finest, the kindest, and who gives from the place where it mostly matters. Caregivers, lovers, friends, pets, those who hold our hands, those who hold our hearts, those who keep our lives at the tips of their fingers, when the only hope is faith. And then the wonder why they got to live when your dear soul was allowed to die.
Lovely. Thank you, Lisa. That reminds me a lot of survivor's guilt that people have. That was very powerful. Thank you. Did anybody else want to read? Christy, I know I pick on you all the time.
Oh, you're fine. I don't mind you picking on me, but I don't know if you guys can see, but my glasses are crooked because one of my nose pieces fell off and they put it back on crooked. So I am actually looking at y'all cross-eyed. So
That's horrible, Christy.
Tonight. Because I can actually see.
I was gonna say no more. When my glasses are messed up, forget about it, because it's enough to just navigate life. Sorry.
Yeah.
I hope they take them back and have them fix it.
Yeah, I'm gonna go back tomorrow. The left side is down really low and the right side is up really high.
I'm so sorry. That sounds miserable. My glasses, I need them so badly that if I don't have them on, I need glasses to find my glasses. So I feel for you. You poor thing. All right, guys. Well, if there's nobody who would like to read for open mic, then I will say thank you so much for being here and celebrating Aruna's newest book. And Aruna, it was lovely to have y'all. It's been a joy. So be well. Hope to see you on another Thursday.
Have a good night, everybody.
Thank you.
Have a good night. Thank you.
Have a good night.
Enjoyed
Bye,
the call.
guys. Bye, guys.
Bye.